Welcome to the Faithful Fathering Podcast. This is Rick Wirtz, founder and president of Faithful Fathering, where we work to encourage and equip dads to be faithful fathers. That's a dad that prioritizes physical presence, is engaged emotionally, and leads spiritually by example. In this podcast series, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. For this, I like to reference King Solomon's wisdom in Proverbs. He says, one who diligently seeks good seeks favor, but one who seeks evil, evil will come to him. One thing social media has certainly enabled is the ability to seek good and evil. The Apostle John warns that, Beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. The one who does what is good is of God. The one who does what is evil has not seen God. And as we'll discuss across this series, social media has the ability to entice old and young alike to imitate evil. So, social media itself is not evil, but evil certainly will show up through social media. So in discussing the good, the bad, and the ugly associated with what kids and adults are exposed to on a regular basis these days is the topic of this series. We'll also discuss how to manage that exposure. To help us with that and to initiate the dialogue around this topic, I have a dear friend in studio with us. She's a daughter, a sister, a follower of Christ, and the outreach director for Street Grace Ministries, Shanita Hart.
Yes.
Shanita, thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and your profession?
Yes, I am the middle child out of 5. So you know that the middle child is always the favorite, even though my parents won't confirm nor deny. I am the outreach coordinator and director here in Houston for Street Grace. We are a anti-trafficking nonprofit. We work in prevention of commercial sexual exploitation of children. So as Rick was saying, social media is a big part of that. And I'm just excited to be here.
Well, it's a blessing to have you. Now, tell us a little bit about your journey as a Christian. When did the Lord get a hold of you? And can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yes, of course. So I was raised in the church. Even if my parents weren't making it to church, they were making sure we went to church, Sunday school. And so I always had a relationship with God. But it wasn't until, I believe, this was 24, that the Holy Spirit really came and grabbed a hold of me. And that's when he kind of took me from that rebellious stage and had me focus on him and my health and working out every day and in my Bible every day. And so when that happened, I noticed how many friends I lost because I wasn't partaking in the same festivities as them, and my whole world was shattered. But because of my relationship with God and the Holy Spirit, it didn't impact me the way I thought it would. Mm-hmm. I had more of an understanding in the sense of I've been removed, and so growing up, I was always removed or different, and I didn't like it because everybody wants to fit in, right? Mm-hmm. And so as I got older, God really started to show me that. And so it was in that moment that he really got a hold of me. And it was funny because the first time I heard his voice audibly, I was going to an orthodontist appointment and a new song came out and I really wanted to listen to it. It was a secular song. And I was like, just this one song. Every morning I'm listening to my worship music, so just this one song. So I start playing it and I'm at a stop sign and I hear clear as day, "What are you doing?" And I turned around, I know there's nobody else in the car with me, and I was like, and I say, "I just wanted to listen to this one." Okay. And so I just turned it off. It was like, all right, clearly this is not what you want.
Somebody's watching.
Exactly. And so, and just from there, I continued to just to grow in my faith, to continue to try and adhere to the Holy Spirit and really where God wanted me. And he brought me to Street Grace. And so I was surprised, but I was like, if this is your will, I'll follow you. So
tell us a little bit about, I'm just curious about the disciplines that you initiated that allowed you to, we're told we're going to be aliens in this world, right? That's what we are as Christians. Can you tell a little bit about the disciplines that allowed you to push beyond that point? Because that's a pretty uncomfortable point, particularly in your early 20s, to say, I'm not going to hang with these guys anymore.
I think it was one. I really believe when you hear God's timing, that is true. You know, I do believe that God will give you grace up until a certain point, and then He's like, it's time for me to intervene. And so before 24, I was very rebellious, and I've never been rebellious, you know, child, like a teenager growing up. But at 21, my sister and I moved out, and I was like, it's time to rebel, because I didn't like that people were saying that I was such a good woman and I'm marriage material. And I was like, what does that mean? You know? And being 29 now, I'm just like, really, Shanita? That's a good thing. Those are compliments. But I didn't like that. And so I was going out with my friends all the time. My sister hated living with me. And so a year later, God was like, it's time for you guys to move back home. And even within that time, I was still being rebellious. I didn't want to be home. And I remember my parents saying that we were going to church. And I was so angry. When they said that, I was so angry, because I was like, I do not want to. Why? I've never questioned that before. But in this time, it was just like, oh my gosh. So we go to church, and we're at Victory, Hamilton Mill. And I remember Pastor Dennis, he said to everybody, close your eyes and ask God, what is it that's holding you back from your relationship? And clear as day, I saw myself in a bar I was going to with friends taking shots. And I just started to cry, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was in that moment. And so I knew I had discipline because of, you know, playing sports, being on the dance team and certain things. I had a certain amount of discipline from my parents and from the sports and activities I played in. And so I was able to use that, you know, to be like, no, I'm okay, understand there's a party going on. If I went, it was to celebrate a friend, but I wasn't partaking in the activities. Right. And that was then when I would hear things like, oh my gosh, you're so boring now. And I was like, oh, wow.
So well, two things. One, I'm glad we have something in common. You're 29 and I'm plenty nine. But I love the way the Lord uses that discipline in other parts of your life to apply it where He needs you to apply it. Not unlike you know, the zealous nature of Paul and knocked to the ground.
Right.
And they just redirect this zealous effort into the right direction.
Yes.
Now, you have been with Street Grace Ministries as outreach director here in Texas you've been with Street Grace about 4 years.
Yes.
This position has been the last year or so.
Here in Houston. Yeah.
And I know you had referenced 4 pillars. Tell us a little bit about Street Grace and how that, about the ministry.
So in the work of prevention, we want to stop anything prior to it happening. There's many nonprofits that work in the rehabilitation and helping those who have already been harmed. But we believe that creating awareness, creating trainings and initiatives for the youth and the parents, we can get in there pre-harm. And so we model 4 pillars, that is prevention, protection, pursuit, and policy. And with these 4 pillars, we have different initiatives under them that will help, especially, for instance, policy, that's changing laws for survivors, but also for our children. You know, if things have happened, we want to be able to have laws set to where a survivor can still go out and get an apartment or purchase a car, get a job, because what they were doing while they were being trafficked was not their decision. And so that shouldn't follow them. So being able to come in and really fight for the one, not the 99, you know, we always want to protect that one, and we're able to do that. And so for me, because I do outreach, I work under the pillar of prevention. Okay. So that is building that awareness, our youth initiative, Youth Leadership Academy, so teaching the youth what leadership is, but not just leadership in itself, but digging deeper in who you are, your character, your attitude, your mentorship. Who are you looking at as a mentor? Do you know what a healthy mentor is? Healthy relationships, your attitude, these things matter, you know, as you're going through school, middle school and high school. And before you get to that college point, you are a sponge. So you're taking on everything. There's boundaries that you can set and not feel bad for setting them. And so I believe that just that building awareness and giving people knowledge on what's going on, it's a bubble burster, but it's important. So I really enjoy being
And how do you really come beside you mentioned a Youth Leadership Academy, how does that really come, how's that implemented, or how's that encouraged, how is that used to inform and help develop?
So we work with churches and schools. Really it's if the church or the school sees that this initiative can really benefit their children. There's a student guide and a facilitator guide. And the way we go about it is, it's not, I'm not a teacher, so I'm not teaching you, giving you lesson plans and things of such, but it's a discussion. So I make sure that the foundation that's built with the children is a safe space. Nobody's here to judge you. And the moment that a child may snicker or laugh, that's being corrected, because that's not what we're allowing while we're doing Youth Leadership Academy. And so for me, it's just really gaining trust from the kids. And I think I love it because, yes, I'm older, but I'm not too old to the point where they think I'm too far gone and I can't relate to them. And so I'm also transparent. You know, there's certain things I'm like, you guys, I've been there, you know, even your teacher, your parents, we've been in a place of where we want to fit in, you know, but when you really step outside of your feelings and your emotions, because that clouds your judgment, you can really look at a situation and say, yeah, I don't want to be a part of that.
And what are the keys that raise that awareness for the kids and for the teachers, you know, for those you want to engage? What are the keys to really raise that awareness?
I think, like I said, building that trust with the kids, but also that there's no judgment. A lot of times there's shame, there's guilt that kids deal with because of peer pressure. And so when you want to be able to build awareness and talk to youth about certain topics, they'll hear you if they trust you and they know that you won't judge them, because you're speaking to them in hopes that nothing has already happened, in hopes that, you know, somebody older has not reached out. But if you really build that safe space, they'll be able to say, okay, because somebody reached out to me on social media, you know, and they'll be able to let you know what's going on. If they don't feel safe or protected, they'll stay silent.
So you really try to initiate some of that uncomfortable conversation, if you will, to see how they respond, and then you have that awareness from that. Okay, I got you. Okay. Now, you know, some of us, some folks out there have probably seen The Sounds of Freedom.
Yeah.
Can you? I know you have a tremendous heart for the next generation because you're right in the middle of this. But can you pull that into context of what we're looking at domestically versus that international view that was presented in Sound of Freedom?
Yes. So Sound of Freedom was a great movie. But like you said, it's international. We are domestic. And so what you see domestically, unfortunately, it's a lot of things within the household, family, friends, coaches. They are already in the child's life, where they're trying to get access to the youth by pretending to be somebody online that they already know, or being that family friend, being that mentor, the coach, the teacher. And so unfortunately, domestically and internationally too, it doesn't have a face, right? So when it comes to that, that's why it's so important for parents to know what's going on. If your children don't feel comfortable enough to talk to you, or if you dismiss them when they say, this person doesn't really make me I feel uncomfortable. Nothing could have happened, but they're just like, I don't feel comfortable. That right there is you should know that person is not
barometer.
Then listen to them. I think a lot of kids have been dismissed. Listen to your children, you know, because they're not saying things all the time just to say something. If they don't feel comfortable, then they shouldn't have to continue to go to the piano lessons. You may think that they don't want to participate in piano lessons, but maybe their teacher is not the instructor that you think they are. And so adhere to it, and then have those conversations. If your child really doesn't want to play piano, then allow them to come to that conclusion, say, you know, my instructor wasn't that bad, I just didn't want to go to piano. But give them that space to feel comfortable enough to talk to you without you getting upset with them.
Sure. Now, if there is a a church or a school out there that wants to engage Street Grace, what's the best way to do that?
Yes, you can visit our website, streetgrace.org, and feel free, if you're here in Houston, to reach out to me, Shanita Hart. My email will be on the website, or our executive director, Jamie Carruthers.
Okay. And what advice do you have for dads if they just have a gut feel, or even if they don't? What do dads need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think for dads, communicate. Have those uncomfortable conversations. They're uncomfortable, but it's needed, because if the dads aren't having them, somebody else will. And there's not only, male predators, but the role that a father plays in a child's life is very important, because you really set the tone, for your daughters on how confident that they'll be. You set the tone for how they'll want to be treated, because you are who they see first. And so if you are admiring them, telling them how beautiful she is, and when another man comes to do that, her response will be, thank you. And that will be it. She won't blush and shy away, and because that's a sign of, okay, she has not heard this before. And even with your boys, spending that time with them, showing them what two men having a relationship looks like in terms of being a mentor, throwing ball, having those conversations, those uncomfortable conversations with your sons, in the sense of how to treat women, and how do you want to be treated by a woman, and things of those is important, because they're learning that from their peers.
Sure. Now there's an age appropriateness, obviously,
right.
that needs to be considered. But I know as a dad, I'm just always blown away at how young kids are exposed these days. What is there a certain flag age, or are you just watching for things? Just some tips for dads to say, what would be appropriate to approach, or what kind of dialogue should I have?
Yeah. So we actually, in one of our trainings, Keeping Kids Safe in the Digital Age, talk about the age range, and so we say from let's say 1 to 3. Telling your children the correct language for body parts. Why? Because predators do not like when they hear that a child knows the correct term for that body part. They don't like it, and so it shouldn't be a nickname. It should be the correct term. From ages about 4 to 6, you can start talking about boundaries. What makes you comfortable and uncomfortable, because kids know that. I worked at a preschool for 3 years, and when you're potty training their kids, you're not allowed to. You're right. You are correct to say that. So can you wipe yourself, please? And so and I'm just like, this is amazing. They know these things. That is important, because kids will communicate with you. And then from ages from about 8 and up, they will want to start, they may ask you questions. They'll start asking you questions. Do not shy away from them. Answer them, because they're letting you know that they're ready to hear those answers. One, they probably heard a topic at school or from a peer. So if they're coming to you asking you, Mom, what does this mean? Or Dad, what does this mean? Answer it to your best ability. Of course, use certain language to where they can understand it, maybe breaking it down for them a little bit. But once they start asking those questions, it's important to start answering them instead of just pushing it away, saying they're not ready, because they are ready. That's why they asked you.
Well, that's some great clarity. Thank you, Shanita. And dads, I hope you're listening. Number one, we have to know the answers, so you better be ready for that. But two, I would say, if it's an inopportune time to answer a question, don't belittle the question. Just say, not right now. We will talk about it at this point in time. But just some fabulous tips here from Shanita Hart with Street Grace Ministries. Dads, this is something we need to tune into, to be sensitive to just the realities of the world. So take on your job as the dad you're called to be, the dad that your kids need to see every day. Open and ready to discuss, communicate at every opportunity. God bless, Godspeed.